Hey, it's Chris. Let's do this crowdfunding roundup. That's all I got. No intro. Let's go straight to the games. Why you tuned in the first place. All of them, as much as I can give you in a short amount of time. Should you back it? Let's go. First up, the clear biggest winner over on Kickstarter right now is going to be Kelp. Obviously, it's got the most money raised. I had no clue what the price point was going to be for this, and I had no clue what the funding excitement was going to be for this. I have the copy sitting right behind the camera. I did the video earlier in this week. It's a head-to-head two-player asymmetric shark versus octopus, deck builder versus dice roller, and it does something unique with sort of a hidden movement deduction style of things with these dominoes, stratego-esque, that you're going to be facing away from your opponent if you're the octopus, where you're going to be shuffling around trying to eat your various little dominoes that you can get next to if you can achieve that, or you have the shark that's going to be rolling dice, using those dice to mitigate as well as pass very quickly from one side to the other in order to find, catch, and defeat the octopus in the first place. But the octopus has a chance to save and can block, essentially, up to 2 times before the shark automatically wins if the octopus is caught a 3rd time. It's a great game. It's a great game. It's light. It's going to have some mystery. It's going to have some asymmetry that you may or may not like. But it's also going to have some potential anticlimactic if the shark just gets really lucky at the beginning of the game or early on. And so that's what you just got to know as a whole. The abilities are nice. You get ability upgrades on both the shark and the octopus's side. Again, I'm hoping that, not having looked at this page at the time of me filming this, that they're going to be a little bit extra, because I believe there's going to be an expansion offered with the game in the first place here. And so if we scroll down here, we can kind of take a look. Again, it gives you sort of what you're getting in this sense, a little bit of everything. Shark miniature. Actually, there was a Lego shark in the prototype, which actually I kind of like that better than the shark miniature. I would worry about this miniature. As cool as that is, aesthetically hovering over the octopus tiles, I worry about balance and tipping over, which kind of would make it a little bit anticlimactic there. Deluxe version, now that's a cool octopus miniature. I kind of like that. So let's see, what are you actually getting? Because go back here for the shark for a second. Shark has 3 different types of dice. The dice are going to be able to be used in multiple different ways. The blue ones are going to be your current, allowing you to quickly hover over from one place to the next, and then using those dice as you utilize them to upgrade your shark's abilities in the first place. But your shark is going to have yellow and red dice. Yellow are going to be your search. Basically, you get to look and peek and see what's there. But then the red are going to be your strike if you can strike and find the octopus. But you're going to have to roll certain numbers high enough to be able to use them on those various spots on the board in the first place. I mean, this is a small indie design company, and so you're going to get what you're going to get, and it's probably going to be a little bit more of an expensive price point. And that's kind of what I would expect. $49 for that, and $65 for the deluxe edition. The aesthetic is there. You're learning as you go, and there's going to be a little bit of a meta, but it wasn't so much of a learning meta in terms of the asymmetry between the two that you really have to know everything that the other person is doing to counteract it. And so that's kind of nice, because that's the biggest barrier for a lot of these asymmetric games, whether it's 2 or 4 players in the first place. They're getting you a couple mini expansions here in the form of 4 little mini sets. The jellyfish will allow you to steal energy from the shark. The zones are giving different ways for the shark to basically manipulate the board and obstruct the octopus. Then you can hide the octopus under a coconut, making it harder to attack, or have more dens powered up in the corners where the shark can potentially go or start with. So that's kind of cool. Mini expansion as well here for new pursuits and brilliant behavior. So yeah, I mean, this could be a really expensive if you got everything, and so maybe that's why it's got so much money. But that's kind of cool. It's giving you a lot of stuff, and you just have to really like it. So if you like it enough from that side of things, go check it out. There's more informed and more eloquent people on this page than checking out my video is worth it. So go talk to them and see how much they like it separately, if you will, as someone who is clearly biased in the first place towards this game and this type of game. So yeah, it's more expensive than I thought. There's more add-ons than I thought, but I think people like what they see, and it's more approachable as a 2-player asymmetric game. It reminds me a little bit of a simpler, more straightforward, with a different mechanic of Harrow County, the other one that I've talked about in the past from off-the-page games. But that is why it's doing so well, and that's first up this week. Next up, we have Undergrove from Hardgrove and AEG, and this is taking another spin on another theme that we've seen many times this year already. Actually, is not only the nature theme, but the mushroom theme. And so what you're doing here is you're actually spreading your roots, literally and figuratively in this game, trying to connect resources, gather and absorb carbon, as well as utilize that to grow your seedlings into trees. The more roots that they have, the more chance they score, and the more chances of them developing into a tree, which just give them more ability to score more points at the end of the game. you're going to be having a carbon footprint, and carbon is going to be one of the main resources you're going to be trading back and forth on this grid-based action system, because there's going to be 4 different types of mushrooms that you're going to be able to activate or utilize, and you're going to be placing down these different types of mushrooms onto the board, but they create intersections, and where you're placing your seedlings is at these intersections in order to utilize the various abilities around there. You have about, I think, 5 different actions that you can take on your turn. This is how I memorized it, right? The AARP of Undergrove. It's like activate, absorb. I'm forgetting the AARPP because it's an extra P, but that's what you've got going on there. And so there's ways that you're going to be doing this. There's asymmetric objectives, there's overall goals for individual players, but the game actually goes until that carbon you're absorbing is one of the main nutrients that you're trading back and forth in order to get other resources and in order to grow your seedlings and gain some of those roots in the first place. It goes until you absorb, absorbs enough of that carbon, the carbon footprint, and then the game ends and everyone gets one more turn to make equal turns. And so it's just whoever absorbs the most, but that's going to be a currency that's going to be used as a trade-off. And so having the most of that is not going to guarantee you the most points by any means. So that's what you're getting essentially in this game. Now, it is going to be deluxeified here, upgraded components to a wood version for all of these, as well as double-sided and a micro mini expansion in terms of the Whispering Woods to go along with it. And that's the Kickstarter exclusive, or the justification, if you will, to get it now at this point. If you're a subscriber on their email list, you get these little Christmas trees to go along with it. Rulebook is out there. Rulebook was out even before the campaign launched. They give you a couple of gifts over here so you can check out what the actual gameplay dynamics are. And that's pretty much everything in a nutshell. Go check out Tabletop Simulator and a few stretch goals here with some, a little bit of gameplay content and a little bit of deluxeification. Mushroom holders if you really want to be really cool. So they'll be the coolest kid on the block with your mushroom holders. Shipping is whatever. And so it's deluxeify or wait to retail. Can you afford to miss it? Yeah, we'll see. Next up, Ring of Chaos and I love this. They're hyping Matthew Lillard from Scooby-Doo. And so this is a very interesting game. It reminds me very much from Beetle and Grimm's here, as they say, 5 guys who hit a midlife crisis who started a D&D company, essentially, right? Or I shouldn't say D&D, an RPG company, because that's where a lot of their products are if you go over to their website. And so they basically have created their own version, and I'll put this out the closest, having read the rulebook and watched some of the stuff on the page. WizWar. It gives me a very similar vibe in a different way to WizWar, because essentially what you've got is you've got this Ring of Chaos, and they're actually giving you a ring that will actually fit around your little characters on the board. I forget if it's miniatures or standees, but it's unimportant. But it fits around the base of them, and you can actually like move it around with that, and you're going to be stealing that Ring of Chaos, trying to get the most points. And the first one to get 11 points, either by stealing the ring, picking up the ring, or eliminating someone else's team. Not only do you get points for eliminating someone else's team, well, I guess I should rephrase that, right? You actually get their whole team's points if you eliminate them, if you eliminate the last character on their team. And so what you've got is you've got potentially many different factions that are going to have an asymmetrical leader ability, and you have 4 characters that are similar, or you have 4 characters that are symmetric on each team. Your 4 tropes of the D&D world. I believe it's like cleric, wizard, fighter, and rogue, essentially. And all of them can have slightly different abilities, but all 4 on each team are the same 4 characters. And the factions that they're offering you that's the asymmetry and the dynamic difference. And it gives you a little bit of WizWar because, 1, it's kind of a cool aesthetic like WizWar, but 2, it's got your essential card play driven action economy that you're going to be utilizing, because it's going to take a very WizWar style of moving, taking actions, taking a bonus action, going around the table until somebody either scores those points or you're the last one standing. So the one thing I like is that it makes it very clear on the map, right? You have your set of characters and they move as a group. So you'll have all 4 of them equally standing next to each other because that's your party, right? That's the D&D, that's the RPG tie-in. You get 2 boards here with the base game, and they give you, I believe, 2 more to go along with the deluxeified version. And there you go, standees, awesome looking standees. And again, they talk to you about the different factions that are present here, the 8 in the base game. And I think they say it's something like, I'm going to screw this up, 32 in the deluxeified version. And again, they run you through the Temple Guardians as well, because Temple Guardians, essentially what you're doing on your turn is you're drawing 3 cards to replenish your hand, and then you get to play as many cards as you want from your hand to take those very actions that I mentioned, including spells and equipment and everything else in between that you would imagine with an RPG or WizWar style of game. And some of those cards that you're potentially drawing are Temple Guardians, and that's just like a player versus environment sort of situation. And so they basically do every 1 damage on the whole board, except if you can block it or avoid the damage. So stretch goals here: standard edition, platinum edition includes sun-dropped minis, doubles the number of battle maps, which is, oh man, that's a lot, and mounts them on larger game boards and special printing effects. Okay, the real benefit here with the premium edition, though, the 2 additional battle maps, new tactics and strategies on a much bigger game board. So do you really need the 2 maps from that aspect of things, or are you a mini junkie? And I like what they're offering. I'm really intrigued. I actually kind of like that t-shirt. I make irrational choices. That's me. That's my channel in a nutshell. But there's only 1 video really on the main page. Maguire Review did one, and it's going to be deluxified if you want to get it. Again, with this one, though, I have no idea if it's going to be at retail. Their other campaign is not a board game at all. I'd be a little bit hesitant from that aspect of things, but it looks like a relatively straightforward game. It's just going to be, you know, miniatures coming from a first-time creator. I doubt you're going to have that done in August of 2024 unless they're almost ready to hit the print button at this point. Now, they've got to put out a lot of other RPG D&D stuff, so I have no doubt that they can put this out. It's just, what does the scope look like and how late is it going to be potentially? But overall, cool, came out of nowhere concept, and you can see why it's got some support, $174,000 at the time of me filming this. Now, we're getting a reprint of a 6-year-old game from Alley Cats, Calimala, and this is getting $50,000 already. And they say that they've remastered it, they've given it new Ian O'Toole art, and they've tweaked the mechanics as well as the player count. Now that plays 2 to 5 instead of just 3 to 5, because essentially what you've got going on is you've got 8 action spots on the board that you're going to randomly allocate in sort of a 3x3 grid, because I think the center one is always the same. And then you have 15 different scoring tiles that you can see utilized in this picture right above. And essentially what you're doing is you're going to be creating action stacks that via your tokens that get placed down between each of the 9 different action spots. And so what you get to utilize then is when you place it between 2 of the spots, you get to take both of the actions on both sides. And if you play a white one from your reserve rather than one of your colored ones, one of your character colored ones, then you get to take each action twice. And you don't have to take these actions in any order. It can be A and then B if you only have 2 actions. It can be B and then A. Or if you get your white one, you can play A, A, B, B, A, B, A, B, 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 A, A, however you want, right? Contra style. And so that gives you some variability in how you want to do that. But the other fascinating standpoint is that when you ever create a stack of 4, because that's the max stack that you can have between these, then the bottom one actually gets taken out and it gets placed on that 15-row scoring column. And so you're going to have 15 different times that you're going to be scoring, but when the one it's placed on is how you're going to score based on the resources and the points that you have in that specific area. The other new thing that they're offering here on terms of crowdfunding, but as well as maybe in the retail shop, is the Intrigue expansion, which is going to offer more asymmetry and just more action tiles and markers to go along with it, as well as some component upgrades with the collector's edition. So they run you through, again, the head-to-head comparison here of the 2017 version versus the 2023 version. And that's pretty much all you need to know. You can check it out, I believe, on one of the electronic websites, Tabletop Simulator, if we scroll down far enough here. What you've got going for you, the deluxe edition isn't terribly expensive, $58. But the extra deluxe version for $85 will get you a neoprene mat as well as some sleeves. I have no idea. I like the art. I like the idea of this, but this is one where I could see myself either really liking it or just also not being sure of whether or not it's going to be a great fit. Just knowing how this dynamic, these tile stacking and these action customization, optimization is going to work. So it's going to be probably a pass for me right now, but this is one that I'm going to probably add to my trade list over on Board Game Geek and really highly look at post-campaign in terms of getting. Now, the one thing I have to point out here at the end, this is a semantics thing. It's also going back to my video I talked about reviews and previews, right? Making me the unpopular shill on the board gaming tabletop scene. Because, I don't know, I guess I feel like I need to shout this from the tabletop, my white tabletop, right? Reviews, right there. Alley Cat calls it reviews. You don't call it reviews unless you mean to call it reviews, right? This is a very meaningful thing. However, okay, Rado, previews, Rado's final thoughts, playthrough, overview. None of those are reviews. Prove me wrong, or tell me in the comment section I'm wrong. I don't think any of those are reviews. And so they're previews. They're previews and playthroughs. So anyway, now I don't know. Maybe people are putting impressions and review thoughts into playthroughs nowadays. I don't know. Again, going back to my other video, I always said that if you're doing one of those things and you're getting paid, there's no subjective. You're saying, this is how you play. This is what happens when you play. Not, oh, I really love this while I'm playing it. Like those two things are separate because you're getting paid. And so it muddles the water a little bit. Muddies the water a ton, actually, if I say the phrase right. Anyway, Calimala, it's funded. It's well over funding at this point, so check it out if you want. Next up, Wizards of the Grimoire Shifting Sands. I was just talking about this the other day. My copy actually just got put back over on the shelf right there because of one of the ones that's coming out next week that I put the video out on yesterday of Singularity, and I was comparing it to Singularity. And if you're not familiar with Wizards of the Grimoire, it's definitely an indie game. It did not show up at retail the first time around. It got the Space Biff endorsement. I think it even got like the Shut Up and Sit Down endorsement. I mean, compared to those people, my endorsement means absolutely nothing. But this is offering, and I didn't realize it was going to be a standalone expansion, but it is. So you can get either the base game or this one for $35, both of them for $70. Essentially what this is an asymmetric dueler head-to-head. But basically what you've got going on, what you've got going on in front of you is you've got an ever-changing, ever-manipulating, ever-acquiring market of spells. And those spells are going to be basically acquired because you can manipulate what spells you have in front of you. You can only have so many spells in front of you. And in order to activate them, you have to play the mana cards from your hand. And the mana cards from your hand don't matter what the number is. It just needs a certain number of cards themselves, but you can also use those mana cards as direct damage. But you can also not play that spell once you've activated it until all those mana cards are going to go off of it. So each turn it comes back to you, you take one of those mana cards off as a countdown mechanism until you try and replace it. And do you engine build to be able to get more spells, to get more mana, to get more playtime, to get more actions in your turn? Or when do you change that engine into an attacking engine to overtake your enemy because it's a first one to knock the other person out sort of wins? The new element that they're offering with this game is that they're going to be offering a new type of card called a relic. And so there's two different like advanced levels of spells in the base game, like your basic level of spell and then like your super advanced kill you, whiz war sort of over the top stuff. And there's just tons of it. And it's all asymmetric. Like you pull that one spell card out of the deck, your opponent is not going to have access to it or have ability to get it whatsoever. And so how you build that combo driven engine spell-wise is incredibly unique and incredibly satisfying in this game. And this is giving you relics, which are basically a use one time and destroy, which offers you a whole new unique way of mitigating or creating and destroying your own engine in order to maximize the damage output and minimize the turnover or delay in doing that. It's just an absolutely fantastic small indie game. My quote is actually right here, I think. I wasn't expecting that. He didn't tell me that, the designer didn't tell me that this quote was going to be on there. It was on one of my mini reviews where I did a whole bunch of games at once earlier in the year. And so I stand by this. So, I mean, and look, those people all hold more weight than me. So again, don't listen to me whatsoever. Go listen to one of them who is clearly better talking about board games and more well respected if you actually want an opinion that matters. And you can check out a few videos here as well. They run you through how you play a little bit, and everybody has their playthrough video nowadays because okay, I don't know, is that where the money is? I'm just teasing, sort of not. I've been debating about doing this recently about just turning on full heal. If you're familiar with wrestling terms as well, just playing off the persona. Like I want to be the Matt Cardona of board games, essentially, right? Everybody can hate me, everybody can call me whatever they want, but it's sort of blending real life and this, which is truly, actually, you know what? I want to be the MJF. I'm the MJF, only like I'm the second tier MJF because I don't really think I'm better than you. I just think I'm just always second best, and I'm going to stick with that. Anyway, next game. What do we got going on next? Next up, we have Valka, which is from the creator of Token Terrors, and this is another revision in terms of aesthetic as well as slight game mechanics in a sort of multiplayer card-driven head-to-head battler, multiplayer minus the trick-taking, if you will, of something like a Tournament of Camelot in that line. Essentially what you do is at the beginning of the game, you have 10 cards. And you get those 10 cards from the deck, and every turn you're going to be drawing a certain number of cards from the deck in order to replenish your 2 lines of cards attacking-wise. And you have a front line and a back line. And if you have no cards or fighters in the front line or the back line, you're out. And so it's last one standing. You can play multiplayer. This is going to be a very heavy take at that game because all you're essentially doing is fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. Tons of cards, tons of asymmetry, 42 unique fighter cards, 44 basically supplements in terms of events, buffs, and items, as well as these warbands. And these warbands are going to be asymmetric factions that you're going to be slowly drafting, not even really drafting, but just drawing randomly. And so if you have more than one of them in your front line, which is the only line that you can attack with, which you must attack with every single turn, somebody, you have the ability basically with these little buffs. And there's about, I don't know, like 8 or 10 of them. So in the rule book that they go through, and they're all just minor, but they're all asymmetric. And then the tricky part is when you're taking that attack, there are 4 different ways that you can attack. You can just attack. If your attack is over their defense, you deal them a damage. if you want to group several of your people together in order to overcome somebody's defense, because that's the only way you can damage them. You can do it that way. You can sacrifice your character. If your character only has 1 health less, they can sacrifice to themselves in order to do a damage to somebody else, or you can take the risky chance attack. You and your opponent both roll a d10. Whoever rolls higher wins and does damage. So that's it. And you go until you're the last one standing. And so I think this is just a little light style driven card game that my kids would love. I'm not sure the art is totally appropriate for them, but it'd be fantastically crazy in sort of a Wiz War style of way. So I'm definitely intrigued by it. I liked Token Terrors as well from the previous game design. And so Token Terrors just ultimately, just something didn't click in terms of the asymmetry for me. It was a little bit too chess-like. I like a little bit more chaos. This is my type of chaos. So if you're looking at this, again, indie design as a whole, what are the rewards? I didn't even look. $30. It's a little bit higher overall than I would have guessed, but ultimately not really that much higher. I don't really think there's a whole lot of stretch goals or anything. Let's see. I don't really see anything. Shipping is going to be $14. So, I mean, yeah, it's expensive if you factor in the shipping from that side of things. But again, you're not going to get this on the secondary market, and you're getting a little content here with the Shadows expansion, which, okay, mini expansion and base game for $45. I mean, that's probably going to be pretty equivocal if you can get it in the secondary market. Otherwise, you just might not be able to as well, but that's why it's over 100% funded at the time of me filming this as well. So let's go over to Holotype Mesozoic Europe. This is a Mesozoic Europe expansion because the base game was talking about North America. They're adding more dinosaurs in this 2 to 5 player worker placement style game. Essentially what you're doing is you're going to one of 5 locations, at least in the base game. I think this is adding a few more locations, a few more dinosaurs, a few more types of cards that you're going to be able to use, and you're using your workers to go to these different tiles or cards and activate them in order to gather resources, in order to swap resources, in order to basically be able to play the dinosaur cards you need to in order to win the game to score points. And the unique aspect of this from a worker placement style is that you have 3 different types of workers, and that worker is going to be able to bump other workers. Like you have your professor, your grad student, and like your undergrad or whatever it is. And so they can bump each other at the lower levels, which, you know, maybe sounds a little bit take that, but essentially it's also saying that if you do that appropriately, you can bump your own workers, which means you're going to get more returns and more, you know, return on your gain of being able to put those workers back out for a second time. And so this is giving you a new expansion for $19. Everything else along with it for $65, including the 2 mini expansions and the base game if you got it the first time around or you didn't. And so you have these skill boards that you're going to be slowly upgrading, as well as the specimens that you're going to be creating. You can see how many victory points they're giving you at the bottom and then how you create them at the top. And so it runs you through the fossils and the field expedition cards, everything that you're going to be doing along with it. You have personal objectives as well as global objectives that you're going to be trying to do in this worker placement game. You're getting the focus boards as one of the new elements here in order to upgrade them and get new ways of getting points, bone beds, whatever the heck those are, as well as new milestones and variants to go along with it. So I really think you probably need to watch a video. The rulebook didn't give me the best flow overall, but I think that watching some of the video, you can get a better sense of the flow in terms of what it's going to bring to the table and whether or not this is going to be unique enough for you, apart from aesthetic and apart from theme, more from an actual gameplay mechanic as a whole. So that's it. They talk about one of their other games at the bottom, but that is Holotype Mesozoic Europe. Next up, we have Charcuterie, the board game. Yes, I pronounced it right for once. And so it's got $18,000. It's almost 200% funded at the time of me filming this. And it's a very light style asymmetry set collection Cascadia meets sort of spatial arrangement game. Because essentially all you're doing is, as the host, you're making stacks of these little food tiles. And depending on how many people are in the game is how many stacks you make of like 4 of them high. And you just go around and every person grabs a stack and you have to take that stack and put it on your charcuterie board. And you have to spatially arrange it because you're also going to have recipes as well as set collections, because a la Cascadia, each of the various food ingredients, I believe there are going to be 6 in this type of game, that will be able to score in one way or another that you can change because you draw one of them essentially randomly or choose randomly at the beginning of the game in the first place. And so there's going to be that. There's also going to be the global objectives and the recipes in terms of, okay, well, you want these types of meats or cheeses, or these meats and fruits together, or these cheeses and fruits, maybe not meats and fruits. That's probably a bad example there, but that's what you're doing in a spatial arrangement. They can only be so much covering each other, not more than 50%. They can't hang off the edge of the board, things like that. and they have to be all touching, and they can't be just flat like on there unless they're like the base one. So there's going to be some spatial arrangement going on there. You can constantly rearrange if you have to as you go along. You only do that a certain number of times until your board is either filled up or essentially you're out of turns, and that's it. They run you through both the shapes as well as the different types of all 6 of these, so you can see how they're going to be varied in the first place. And that's the game in a nutshell right there. Everything that you need to know. The rulebook is straightforward. They talk about the recipes, they talk about what makes this game unique, and they give you a couple playthroughs to go along with it here. Price point is not bad, actually. It's more of the Nocturne AEG flat out games style price point, and it's $29, gets you a copy with exclusives and stretch goals. And if you really want to deluxe it up, well, I mean, you can get 2 for $56, if you will. So I actually like that there's only 1 pledge level. It's very refreshing. Not a big spatial person as a whole. I like the idea of the set collections with the asymmetry from a Cascadia standpoint, so I see where they're coming from. But if that's for you, check it out. Next, we go over to GameFound, and we have a few things running on GameFound, and these are actually killing it even more so than anything on Kickstarter this week, which is interesting because I just wasn't sure how widely these are appealing the second time coming around. And the first up of these is Perseverance Castaway Chronicles episodes 3 and 4 from Mind Clash, an epic conclusion to episodes 1 and 2 that were previously delivered earlier in the year. And this is going to be taking a spin on this campaign worker style heavy-ish Mind Clash game from the first time around. And what you're going to be doing here, and this is sort of the asymmetry that I can't talk to you about, that I can't tell you about, that someone else much smarter than I is going to have to give you more information on, is essentially what you've got going on is a 2 to 4 hour game from a worker placement style that you're going to be taking your civilization that you've slowly developed and tamed dinosaurs, and you're going to be utilizing the taming and the riding of those dinosaurs as opposed to just fending them off in episodes 1 and 2. And the tricky part is it's going to use the same mechanics that you may have seen or not seen, depending on if this was your game or not, the first time around in episodes 1 and 2, but there are going to be unique things, sort of like more of a Great Western Trail, like different additions along those lines to give it some of the similar base and core, but to make it significantly different as well, so that if you have those two and you like them but want a different spice of life, it's going to do that. Now, the thing I'll make the wondering guess about is that if you weren't a fan of the first two, or you played them and did not find them to your liking in that sense, I'm not sure this is going to be necessarily far enough away to change your mind as a whole from that. So, yeah, right, it says right here, 4 medium-heavy competitive Euros, continuous story or playable on their own. Dice worker placement as the core, and unique mechanisms to give them their feel. And so they talk about these unique mechanisms: base defense, temporary cooperation, engine building, hex-based, tableau building. I like tableau building and placement exploration. So probably 3 and 4 would be much more up my ilk. 1 and 2, I'm not sure. Again, like game length and overall complexity was probably going to be the biggest barrier, because the actual mechanisms of this game, or games like this in general, aren't terribly necessarily difficult, but the learning of it all, the minutia, the rule book length sometimes is the biggest barrier to entry. Or if it's Voidfall, like their previous game, it's just the setup and teardown. So I have no idea. This is a game where I would be a little bit scared to learn on my own. I would be a little trepidatious, and I would prefer someone else to teach me this game. And again, not that I couldn't do it, but I think that just the learning curve would be a lot easier if someone else read the 30 or 40 page rulebook. I'm sure that it is, and taught me, rather than me read another 30 or 40 page rulebook with all the other ones I'm doing on a weekly basis. And so it talks you through what the mechanisms are going to be uniquely here. In the first one, you have dino taming and riding. And so you're going to be utilizing that to capture them, as well as obtain other resources, and well as the ancient artifact power, whatever the heck that is. And as these dinos are your new, basically most valuable assets, you're going to be able to ride them into unexplored lands in order to basically get more resources and more stuff that's available to you. Assembly becomes more streamlined somehow, apparently one of the first mechanics in one of the other games, and quicker to resolve. So, I mean, whether or not that's in reaction to some of the criticisms, or they just, noticed it themselves, I have no idea. And you have a tableau system that's going to be present as well. Again, rulebook with a solo mode right here. You can check that out as episode 3. Episode 4, they run you through as well down here. Episode 4, what do we got going back? You're doing more fighting. And this is going to be maybe for you non-heavy Euro players, people who are looking for a more head-to-head combat, if you will. There you go. It's running you through a little bit of that as well. There's enough information on the page to get a general gist. But again, you're probably going to have to watch one of the playthroughs or really read through the rulebook to know whether or not this is for you. It's more of a chip theory feel in terms of the price. You're going to get it for a better price as a whole, But whether or not it's for you, that's what you have to ask yourself, because you're still looking at 150 euros for the first two. Whoa, I didn't realize they were that expensive. And you're, going to spend a lot of money on 3 and 4 as well, another 155 euros. So is this 350 US dollars at this point worth for you? And the question I would have is, you can play these all as a campaign-ish, but in order to do that, you'd be spending like a Twilight Imperium time of length in terms of getting them all done, if you're lucky, not including probably setup and teardown for each individual one, because they're each individually boxed and you'd have to do that with all 4 of them. That would be my biggest concern, and the carryover from that sense is okay. But no, this is actually kind of cool. I didn't realize this. They're offering this as an expansion edition rather than just a standalone, and you're paying probably for a little bit less of component overlap, of not having to necessarily get everything new from that aspect. So you could just get 3 and 4, which is actually, I give them kudos for that. I wasn't expecting that, so that's kind of cool. Slight price reduction if you want the expansion all in versus the standalone all in. It's way too heavy for me to go into any more detail. Go talk or listen to people that are smarter and better than I am, right? And there you go. There's some videos to be those people right there. So let's go over to Stars of Akarios 1.5. Again, this one, I had no clue what the price point was going to be. I had no clue what the funding goal was going to be. And I'm intrigued, but it's got 2,500 people right now. And for some of the criticisms that were weighed, and some of it was like panned when it came out to some bigger name reviewers, I think they just weren't as big a fan of it overall. I mean, that's pretty good. And still, the Board Game Geek rating doesn't have a ton of ratings, but it's like an 8-ish, and that's really overall well. But I think the biggest thing you have to ask yourself in this one is, if you want X-Wing to be a narrative, cooperative exploring game, and with some RPG element rather than just the dogfighting core of what those games bring to the table in the first place. How much of that do you want in your spacefaring, almost, I don't want to say 4X, but narrative 4X, if you will. I'm using that term very loosely, though. Because again, you're talking, triple digits easily, probably well more than that if you want to get a bunch of the stuff. And miniature driven, a little bit deluxeified overall, and you're going to pay for it, essentially. It's an epic Explore the Stars style narrative campaign, but you're kidding yourself if you don't think this is a lifestyle as a whole. And if you're probably the majority of backers that are getting it at this point, they are probably going in for the gameplay all in, because if I know anything about gamers that are like myself, is we're suckers for the gameplay all in, right? Absolute sucker. That's me. That's me talking. I'm sure it's not you. I'm sure you guys totally resist. You can get all the gameplay content. You can get some extra terrains and ships here if you really want to bling it out more than anything else, if this is your favorite game of all time. And you can spend, upwards of $400 if you really feel so lucky. And let's see. Gameplay pledge. How many people are getting this one? 244. So that's about a little over 10%. Actually, just over about 10% here at the gameplay all in new stuff. And the standard pledge, again, only not very many people as well, 150 of that. And everything new, though, everything new, including the upgrade pack, that's where most of the people are. And then you've got some trickling down here as well. So let's see, what do we got going on for stretch goals, expansions? Just a little bit of upgrades and a little bit of unlock stuff. So the rule books, the gameplay videos are going to give you a much more detailed version of how you're exploring these systems, the actions you're going to be taking, how you're going to be utilizing the resources in order to upgrade your ship and all these various components that you can see here, how you're going to actually be doing combat and what combat looks like in terms of different than the other skirmish style Star, I don't want to say wars, Star Wars, not Star Wars, but ship-based exploration space style skirmish games are going to give you, and how you're going to be doing world exploration too, because it's more of that as well as a combination of maybe some IS Vanguard with a narrative. So I have no idea. I know myself at this point. This is a game where I like the idea of this and I would never get it played. Never at this point of my life. And so it has thankfully no temptation from a personal wallet side of things. This is another game, sort of like Return to Dark Tower that I've referenced in the past. Someone brought this over. I would be absolutely gobsmacked and love to try it. But right now, from a space and time up here, down here, never get it played. And so it's an easier pass than I care to admit from that aspect of things. And they run you through all the new stuff. And they run you through all the upgrades and everything else you need to see on this page. Huge page. Bunch of other videos from smarter people than I am. And that's everything you need to know about the new Stars of Akarios. And if it's really for you, again, lifestyle though, check it out. Next up over in GameFound, we have the latest by Martin Wallace, Chaos Cove, which is an asymmetric worker placement style game where you're going to be activating heroes as well as locations on the board, and you're going to be passing those heroes around as your turn progresses. So on the first turn, you may have, say, 4 of the heroes, and then you pass those to the next person passes you theirs, and you're gonna be able to activate those at the various worker placement spots that are available to you in order to do sort of if you remember the game Monsterlands, not only build resources, build defenses, but also take out enemies and pirates and invaders that are attacking the overall board in the first place, because if you don't, then you're potentially going to have detrimental effects that are going to go along with the consequences of not defending. And so that's probably the biggest nutshell overview that I can give you, because unfortunately at the time of me filming this, there isn't a rule book on the page. There's enough quotes here, and there's a few videos down if we go a little bit further of what the game actually entails. But in order to get the flow, you're probably gonna have to watch a video at this point. You can see how you're earning rewards from trading goods, building your forts, upgrading your ships, as well as gaining new cards in order to basically use these weapons and heroes to fight off invaders in the first place, or as it says there, not only detrimental effects, but everyone could lose. You see how you rotate the heroes around the board depending on the player counts, and you're gonna have access to all of them. But unfortunately, that's about it. Game found exclusive components, and there's one little stretch goal that they're going for at this point, and that's it at the time of me filming this. And that's the kind of the page. It's a lot short of the other pages comparatively, and the base game is going to cost you $55 right now to get. So we'll see where it goes from this, but it's still a little bit of a sparse overall game page from Ape Gamers. So I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I'd like to know why it's going to be that different. What is the most unique thing of it? And hopefully we'll get a real book here in the near future. So check back, Chaos, Cove, there you go. Next up, Iron Maid, strategic roll and write. I mean, it's got $1,700. It's a print and play. Let's talk about it here for a second. Strategic roll and write, where you're rolling 2 dice. You're allocating those dice into the center of this row in the lower left-hand corner of the board. And what you do is then you take this color hex and you fill one of those hexes out on your board. You then build one of the 4 different color buildings over here in the upper left-hand corner on it, trying to create your production line as a whole. Then you just rinse and repeat, trying to score by building the most connections between these buildings and colors, creating your production chain in the first place. Solitaire mode, a couple different pledge levels. They're going to offer you a couple of their other previous games as well as some stretch goals and add-ons. So cute little nice print and play, and there you go. Now, Misty Waters, I have no idea about this one. This is a move combat action style game, if you will, with a very nice aesthetic of the shipfaring side, but there's absolutely no information on how to play the game on the page as a whole. Why back now? Well, you're going to get stuff. It's not going to come to wide retail. Hey, there's 3 different pledge levels. They all have a bunch of content, and they break down at least the content here, which is kind of nice, right? Core, Empires offers asymmetry, a little bit of deluxe, Kraken, super deluxe, Commander, everything above. But that's about it on the page. I mean, you get a huge picture list of the components here, which is awesome. You get to the rule book, which is super text heavy and dense as you go over here, and it outlines all the different things you're gonna be able to do, but none of that is actually on the page. There's a couple quotes, there's a couple videos here for previews and playthroughs, and that's it though. That's it. That's it. A few stretch goals down here at the bottom and some nice artwork. I don't know. Why would I get this game over other move combat action games? What makes this one unique? Why are you giving this one a reprint, a redux? I mean, clearly people are loving it somehow. I mean, 397 people are getting 71,000 euros worth of stuff, folks. That's a lot, which means a lot of people are getting these higher pledge levels as a whole. And that's 210 euros. That's insane for a game, honestly, I hadn't really heard of before this week. And I guess that's cool, but that's a lot of money for me not knowing how or why to get it on the page itself. And the rulebook is fine, but again, it's kind of surprising as a whole, but clearly it's something that people want and people like, so take it for what you will. Speaking of things that people want and like, mini wargaming. Well, it's got, $500,000. If you want to play a brand new RPG skirmish style war game, well, you can, because they just launched this one. And you can spend anywhere of, a couple $100 to well over $1,000 if you want to get this all. So that's awesome if you do, I guess. I don't know how it compares. I don't know what you need to know. There's a couple wargaming channels that are either producing this or highly covering it that are listed on this page as well. The one thing I'll say, though, is I really like the FAQ. They really did a great FAQ. They actually have a link to it on the main page. This is going to sound like a little bit of fluff here, but I like this, right? They give you a little bit of breakdown on what the pledges are in a text format. Okay, that's great. Where should I start? What do I need to see? Can you explain all the products to me in terms of what the different packs are as well? So it's just actually really, really succinct. Someone did a really, really good job on the FAQ. And I give them kudos for that. But you got to look at this though. 1,000 people, $550,000. That means the average pledge is $550. So when we talk about insane price creep, that's like double what it was for freaking Dice Throne. Yeah, people are going to go miniature wargaming skirmish. It's a lot more expensive at retail. That's still a forking metric ton. It is. So can you actually get it played? Is it better than the ones already out there? How much better is it than the other established ones that are out there in the first place? Or is it better? That's what you got to ask yourself. And are you willing to spend $500,000 to find out? Because that's essentially what you're doing. When is this actually going to be delivered, though? Let's take a look. Whoa! February 2024? No, just kidding. February 2025. So a year and a half if you're lucky. Let's be honest. It's probably going to be 2 years. And I wouldn't be surprised as we go down to the shipping here. Unfortunately, I was fearing that there's 2-wave shipping going on. You have that many miniatures. So I'm going to guess that maybe wave 1 is going to be in 2025 beginning, and maybe you're going to get wave 2 by the beginning of 2026. You want to put this much money, $500,000 down for a game that you're never going to play for 2.5 years? Can you do that math? I can do that math. It doesn't look good in my head, but you know what? Do you? Or just put that money in a bank and actually make some money on it and then go buy it at retail later with more cost savings and probably an overall, gain in your net return. I don't know. Do what you want with your money. There you go. Roundup this week. Boom, shakalaka. Turn in for tomorrow's video because it is going to be the best, biggest, my most interesting upcoming week of November. It's going to be great. Fantastic. 2 amazing, and 1 highly charged games. And, 1 or 2 others as well that we'll cover. But it's going to be freaking amazing. I'm going to go full on wrestling heel for you as well in the near future. Right? If you missed that part in the middle of the video, you probably did. You weren't watching at that part. I know you people skim through and kind of click here and there and go to the end. But I'm going full MJF, Matt Cardona, if you will. Combination thereof. Playing into it. I'm a shill. Everybody likes to hate me. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. Let's go! I'm better than you. No, not really. That's MJF's catchphrase, in case you're not familiar with him at all. Maxwell Jacob Friedman. But his catchphrase is, I'm better than you, and you know it. But I'm not better than you. I'm like second or third best, and you know it. How's that sound? That's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. We'll talk about what I'm watching and what I'm playing tomorrow in the video as well. See you around.